Okay, well, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Leanne Chubuff. I'm the Vice President of Technical Affairs at SQF. I am here to kick things off regarding our session today. And as Tracy said, what our session is about and what this entire day is about recalls. So it's about the prevention about recalls. So what I'm going to share with you today is the data and some data on that SQF has on recalls, starting with non-conformances, because you're going to see or not see a correlation there. And I'm going to hold on for that discussion. The other is recall trends that we're seeing, what we saw in 2022 and what we're seeing in 2023 as we're moving on. And then I want to set the stage for the day because Tracy and we really focused on what we wanted to accomplish today. And you'll see with the agenda, when you look at it holistically, you'll see the agenda and where the method was to our madness. So I want to share with you and set that stage for today. Okay, so let's start with top non-conformances. And as you know, edition 9 has been out since May of 2021. So it's over 2 years now we've had edition 9 out. But we still like to do that comparison to edition 8.1 because we made some key changes within edition 9 regarding labeling and some of the other differences that we have, food safety culture, because that was in place in order to reduce and prevent recalls. We noticed mislabeling of allergens. We noticed those key areas and wanted to make a difference within the code to better understand what we needed to do to prevent recalls from happening. So let's take a look at 8.1. All right. So you see the numbers in the parens are there to say the number of responses there. So criticals, you can see pest prevention is had 2 criticals under 8.1. Pest prevention under edition 9 so far has had 4, right? So you can see that overall there is definitely more criticals in edition 9 than there is in edition 8.1. So definitely we're seeing that trend increasing. Pest prevention is still the #1 critical, but now instead in 8.1, we have ventilation, which issued 2 criticals. And if you remember, edition 9 has that separate requirement for ventilation. So perhaps there's some correlation there that says we're looking at and we're clarifying that code requirement within edition 9, and there aren't any criticals to that. But food safety plan, pest prevention, those are the top criticals that we are seeing in edition 9. So the bolded ones are the ones that we see from edition 8.1 to edition 9, and you can see that it's still transferring over and still having those issues regarding that. Cleaning and when you look at majors, actually, when you look at what the change for edition 9, you remember that we changed the point system for major non-conformances. So it went from a 10-point deduction to a 5-point deduction. And we made that change intentionally. I think everybody thought, why would you do that? Scores are going to go up and etc. But what we wanted to do, our intent was to identify those major non-conformances. And we felt that there was some hesitancy in issuing major non-conformances because they were at such a high point level. And the idea wasn't to get more findings. The idea was to get better findings. And that's what we accomplished. So from 8.1 to edition 9, we actually doubled the amount of majors, but the score stayed the same. From the average score for 8.1 to the average score of edition 9 stayed the same. So it worked. We're getting better findings. What we needed is for sites to see holistically, where are those system element breakdowns? Where are those breakdowns within their food safety system, within their SQF food safety system, and where can they improve? holistically at their site, not just one-offs. So there's a critical, we had one critical, and obviously these aren't all the majors, all the criticals, but we did have one critical in edition 9 to food safety culture. And I talked to Tammy, who was our compliance manager, and Elizabeth, who's our specialist in compliance, and we're like, that's like really almost our favorite non-conformance, because what the auditor did is they looked at their that site's entire performance, and instead of just saying you're going to have all these minor non-conformances, they grouped it all together and put it to a critical to food safety culture. So those are the types of non-conformances that we're looking for at SQF. And so you look at edition 9 and you see that within edition 8.1, let's start there. Cleaning and sanitation, still a major nonconformance. Pest prevention continues to be a major nonconformance. The food safety plan, that was a major nonconformance. Maybe there's more criticals written to that food safety plan now, but you'll see cleaning and sanitation and pest prevention are those top nonconformances. But what's new is that internal audits and inspection. And I want you to think of that is, what can we do in order to improve our performance? And that's really focusing on our internal audits. And thankfully, we have a speaker today, later on this afternoon, Roger Roth with Eagle, and he is going to talk about internal audits and inspection. So you'll see what you can do in order to improve your performance altogether, to ensure that you have the right food safety plan in place. So, and then management responsibility actually is a top nonconformance, and that was primarily due to the fact that food safety culture isn't included in that management review. So you look at the new requirement for food safety culture, you see that we have a list of requirements in 2112 in that food safety culture requirement. And you want to make sure that that is also being reviewed in that annual management review. So those are some of the critical and major nonconformances. You're going to see that really the key areas here is pest prevention and food safety plan and cleaning and sanitation. Those are really the 3 areas of focus when we look at top nonconformances, whether it's a critical or major, and I'm going to show you the minors in just a bit. Okay, so here's our minor nonconformances, 8.1 to edition 9. And you could see there's some similarities. You'll see cleaning and sanitation, dust, insect, and pest proofing. Those are really the major, those most commonly issued minor nonconformances. Equipment continues to be a nonconformance across it. We did change, we reorganized and consolidated many of those nonconformances from 8.1 to 9. So building and materials was, used to be holistically what that was in the environment, and that's within edition 9. So again, management review is in here. Food safety plan continues to be top nonconformance and minor nonconformances. Food defense plan is issued in edition 9, but not in edition 8.1. And what we're seeing in food defense plan is actually sites are not conducting a thorough challenge of their food defense plan. So what they're doing is, like, one example was we tested the food defense plan by having somebody try to walk into the site without a hairnet and holding a cup of coffee and see if anybody would stop them. Well, that's not really testing your food defense plan. That's testing food safety culture or your GMPs or whatever. Did anybody stop that individual? Whether they did or not is really more of a reflection of food safety culture than it is your food defense plan. So make sure that when you are challenging it, that you're actually challenging the plan using some of, those, so using some good exercises there. So definitely don't want to put your site at risk. However, you really need to ensure that that defense plan is working as intended, and that's the intent behind it. And you'll see on that last line under Edition 9, internal audits and inspections again, and you'll recognize that if you do a thorough internal audit, I'm sure Roger is going to discuss this in much more detail, you're going to get some really good results as it relates to internal audits. In fact, we see an improvement of scores, overall SQF scores, when a site does not have a non-conformance to internal audits and inspections. So we see that significantly. So if a site has a major or a critical if a site has, has a major internal audit, major 2 internal audits, their score goes down into the C rating. If they have a minor non-conformance, their score goes into a G rating. And if they have no non-conformances, they're actually in that upper G rating and into the E rating. So like about a 94, 95. So huge difference there. And I'm looking forward to Roger's presentation in order to share what you can do in order to improve internal audits, so that one, you could prevent recalls, and two, overall have a better food safety system at your site. Okay, so let's look into recall trends. That's why we're here. I want to share with you some of the trends that we have here. Okay, so what we see, and this is 2022, and the next slide shares 2023, because we do like to look at trends over time, not just next year or last year, because in 2022, that's a reflection of the SQF code requirements, the changes to those code requirements, the implementation of those key code changes, specifically around labeling and reconciliation of those labels. So you'll see that we have at SQF in 2022, our trends were focused on biological, not chemical or physical. Our focus was on biological. Chemical went down, and chemical is that measurement for mislabeling of allergens. So you'll see that SQF didn't have that as their number 1 reason for recalls in 2022. That biological was that number 1 reason, and it could be a reflection of those changes that we had within Edition 9. So it could be, save that, because 2023 is trending a little different. But you'll see that the total recalls actually is a little bit less so far, trending less, but we'll see where that goes. So I'll save that for the next slide. But biological was our number 1 reason for recalls, chemical and physical. But when you look at these recall numbers and you look at the reason for recalls, they're not syncing up for against our top non-conformances. There are no top non-conformances to environmental monitoring. There are no top non-conformances to labeling or label reconciliation. Physical, there are non-conformances to equipment. There's some of that, but it's not trending so that those top non-conformances are not syncing up with recalls. It's just so strange. Are we looking at the right things? I don't know. I don't see internal audit results, so I don't know if these recalls are syncing up to your internal audit results, but we're just not seeing that the auditor is identifying those areas within the SQF program, that site's food safety system, to sync up with where those recalls are. And why are these recalls happening? And bottom line, what we're seeing is sites are not getting to their true root cause and implementing corrective action on their own internal complaints, external complaints, internal audit findings. And I'll give you an example. We had a site that had a recall. It was a primary site, primary produce, and there was a foreign material in that primary produce. But 6 months previous to that recall, there was a complaint about foreign material in that site's complaint system. But they didn't do a root cause to truly see where that complaint was. So if they had done that complaint, that root cause, they would have identified that there was issues on the farm with foreign material, and that is coming into the processing site. So the process, that it was a produce packer, right? So they were receiving the produce and then washing it, cleaning it, and bagging it. But there was a complaint 6 months previously, and it wasn't identified. It didn't have a root cause analysis, so there was no corrective action. There was no discussion back at the farm level to get a better understanding of where that foreign material was coming from. So what we're seeing is that it's not just when a recall happens or your mock recall. What we're seeing is that there are other aspects within your food safety program that needs to be focused to do that root cause analysis. And fortunately, we set it up today that Jeff Chilton with Alchemy, he is going to do a great presentation on root cause analysis so that you can get a better understanding of what you can do in order to prevent these happening. So, and we have another presentation about foreign material. We have great presentations today about approved supplier programs, etc. So we have great presentations today to address many of these trends that we're seeing. Okay, so let's get into 2023 recalls. Okay, so 2023 recalls are trending a bit differently. So we are seeing that chemical and biological are kind of neck and neck here. So we're seeing a little bit different trends here as it relates to biological and chemical, and then physical as well has a good number of recalls there. So so it's trending similarly, but we are seeing mislabeling of allergens, being a little bit more prevalent now. We are seeing a decrease in recalls, like I said. So last year, we had about 300 recalls. This year, we're trending. We have a little over 100 recalls so far this year, and we're in our fourth quarter. But understand that when there's a recall that happens, if it's from a supplier, it could impact multiple aspects of that industry. So we had, if there was dry, I think, protein powder or whatever acts as an ingredient, onions, whatever it might be, there could be an impact to many sites within SQF. So, but right now we're trending a little lower than we did last year. But what I want to show you here, and what's so significant in this slide, is that the boxes are the average recalls, the scores of the sites that have had experienced a recall. So you can see that there's hundreds, 99s, we have a 82 out there. So the score does not necessarily correlate to whether you're going to have a recall or not. So we're seeing these numbers, and it could be anybody. I think famous last words is it's never happened here, right? So, and there's always, as soon as you say that, there's a person named Murphy and his law is going to take effect, and all of a sudden you could be experiencing a recall. So it's not that this score is going to dictate whether you're going to have a recall or not. So average score for sites that have had recalls is about a 95%. Average days since the last audit is about 203. So are we getting complacent as we are finishing up with that SQF audit? Are we preparing for the audit and then just not moving forward with our food safety plan? So every day the site needs to be audit ready. It's not a matter of what it's not a matter of when you're preparing for an audit and only wanting to get a good score on your SQF audit, but it really is that preparedness every day. That's the intent behind the SQF food safety system, is to be audit ready every day. Because what I say to sites is, when an auditor walks in, that's your best day. that's your best day, and you need to make your best day your every day. And that's what's going to help prevent recalls from happening. So evaluating all of the recalls that we've seen, evaluating all these recalls that we've seen, we've noticed a number of programs that are contributing to recalls. So corrective actions, for example, we're not seeing those corrective actions being actioned out when there's internal audit non-conformances, when there's customer complaints. We're just not seeing those programs being implemented. So again, root cause preventive action, that's just not occurring at the site. Environmental monitoring programs don't include all aspects of the site. We had somebody call in and said they were at a site that didn't have an environmental monitoring program, and they were a dairy site. So we need to make sure that environmental monitoring includes all aspects of the sites, and that they don't include all the potential hazards. So really doing and understanding that hazard analysis as it relates to your environment and your process and your product. So doing that is the key, because that's going to identify what your environmental monitoring program looks like. So we probably need to invite external experts into the site to truly get that evaluation. We want to test to not find. So we have to test to find so that we can seek and destroy. And we need to trend and analyze and get down to that root cause as to where those environmental hazards are coming in, because those biological are from listeria, they're from salmonella, and those are those environmental hazards that we have. And that it doesn't include all those hazards. The validation activities didn't occur when there's any change in those processes. So making sure that we identify where those hazards are, where the proper testing locations need to be, and not be afraid to find any true pathogens or results. And then change management. So we are seeing, as it relates to recalls, supplier specifications changing without notification. So we've identified in the SQF code that if there is a change in the specification, if there's a change in the product formula, if there's a change in the process, the site needs to be, the supplier needs to notify that site. So supplier specifications, they're either not robust enough or they're not being adhered to. The site's not looking to see that the supplier specifications meet what is being received at the site. So garbage in, garbage out. So supplier specifications are key. They need to be written and analyzed, and the testing analyzed in there. Construction controls. We've seen some recalls, especially in foreign material, regarding construction, and regarding when whether it's maintenance or whether it's an outside contractor just walking around the site without any oversight, having that individual just continue to walk and not follow any food safety plans, that's leading to foreign material and even some biological recalls as well. And then glass and brittle plastic programs aren't robust and thorough, because what we're seeing is foreign material to glass and brittle plastic. We're seeing it to, mainly plastic, those foreign material that are inherent into the environment. So those glass and brittle plastic programs aren't being thoroughly developed or being monitored as well. And changeovers. So we continue to see mislabeling due to label control. We continue to see that there's no organization to managing labels. So this was a couple years ago, and there was a retailer that is also a manufacturer, And he looked at their near misses. So we need to track those near misses. He was looking at their near misses, and he noticed that either through an internal audit or a QA review that they were having a lot of mislabeling of allergens. So the label, whether it's allergens or just the wrong label on the wrong product. And so they did this root cause analysis, and what they realized is that their label control room was, in a sense, a hot mess, right? It just didn't have the organization. There was old labels in there. There was no inventory control, anything. And so they went through and created inventory control. They really organized that entire label control process. And so the inventory manager went to QA and said, I just need to let you know, thank you for organizing that. You saved us $150 million. And that's even without a recall. But organizing those labels provided more timely and accurate information to purchasing and to inventory. And it also prevented shutdown of lines and repacking and all of that. And not to mention the potential of what a recall would cost. So getting to and identifying what those near misses are, what those complaints are, internal audit results, understanding and getting to that root cause is really going to make a difference in controlling recalls. And then I would say too, crisis event reaction. So this is flooding is really, I go back to my primary producer recall. The issue was flooding at the site level caused this event, the foreign material to occur. But there wasn't any communication even from the grower into the packer. So there wasn't any communication. The flooding washed away pesticides, and it encouraged some foreign material, delirious weed that was growing in that foreign material. But the flooding occurred, but there was no communication. So it's understanding that crisis event, not just at your site, but also reading and understanding where those crises are within the environment itself. So in your supplier and moving that into the supply chain. So these are the programs that we see that are contributing to recalls and what you can do in order to improve those recall efforts. And so with that, I want to conclude and really walk through today's agenda with you, because I know you all saw a copy of the agenda, you signed up for this event, you're interested in preventing recalls, and I want to share with you what we presented today, or what we put together today in order to address those recalls. So again, we group recalls: biological, physical, and chemical. Chemical being mislabeling of allergens. That's really out of, I would say 99% of all chemical recalls are due to mislabeling of allergens. Once in a while, we actually have a chemical recall, but typically they are attributed to mislabeling of allergens. So what we put together here is an agenda. So the first one is looking at recall prevention, and Jeff Lucas with Mary Yu is going to talk about microbial hazards and environmental monitoring. What can you do in order to prevent a recall from happening from a biological perspective? And then Tracy Sheehan with Mary Yu, with her expertise in allergen management, she's going to go through allergen management and labeling and what you can do in order to prevent a recall from mislabeling of allergens. Nathan Baggio with Costco, he is going to talk about foreign material detection from all aspects, looking at the right equipment in order to detect the material. He's going to share some trends with you as it relates to foreign material detection. And then Gary Von Breda is going to, for McDonald's, is providing a case study in a supplier recall program due to approved supplier programs. So going back to establishing specifications, understanding the issues that could potentially affect your supplier going into your process. So keep saying garbage in, garbage out, and that improved supplier program is that first door into your operation. So it needs to be identified and controlled. And then, as I said, Jeff Chilton with Intertech is going to get down to that root cause and corrective action, building that food safety culture. So how critical it is to identify those areas of opportunity within your site, whether it's through a complaint or a near miss or an internal audit finding or just feedback from your employees, putting forth corrective action, putting forth that preventive controls is really going to make a difference in preventing recalls and in building that food safety environment, building that food safety culture. And then we have Ahmoud Aurora with Provision Analytics, and he is going to talk about the top five operator errors in order so that we can insert some preventive action within your SQF food safety system. And then Roger's gonna come and share what that value of that strong internal audit program is. And I cannot emphasize that one enough, because that is really that window. So catching it before it happens, what you can do in identifying it and moving forward and putting in preventive action. And then, of course, we're going to have our wrap up at 4:30 with Lena Bush with SGS, and just going over the many questions that you have within today, or even what you might have in the future. And then I hope you all stay on, because we put together a really great happy hour, bingo trivia. We have an emoji game. So hopefully you stick around at 5 p.m. and we're going to have some breakouts and play some games, and you can win some prizes. So hopefully you'll stick around for that. But today's agenda, like I said, is really here to shape what you can do in order to prevent recalls from occurring, because we can do that. I don't believe there are good recalls. I think there are many of these aspects that can be preventive. We can't just say to as a corrective action, oh, our supplier had the recall and that's why we had to recall our product. Well, why is that? What did we miss in supplier specifications or our approved supplier program? So today is a day about focusing on recalls. Tracy and I really focused on putting together an agenda that's going to provide you with the tools you need in order to be successful at your site. And with that, I'm going to conclude. I saved a couple minutes for questions, John. So if there are any questions, I am happy to take them.
Yes, we did receive a couple questions, and everyone, forgive me, I neglected to mention at the beginning, we want to make this presentation as interactive as possible. Please send in those questions via the Q&A or the chat. And in order to incentivize those questions coming in, we have a number of Amazon gift cards that we'll be awarding to the best questions of the day. Excellent. So Leanne, we had a couple questions that came in asking the same, effectively the same thing. Could you please give us some examples of how to conduct a good food defense challenge?
That's a great question. So we need to make sure that you're testing your system. So there are some food defense, you can hire an outside body or you could do it yourself. But we had one gentleman that honestly, they did try and walk into the site. So I'm not saying that one isn't it, but it was an outside, it wasn't anybody, it was an outside person. It wasn't somebody that worked at the site that decided, I didn't have a hairnet on, a cup of coffee, are you going to stop me? But they walked in through the guard gate, up in the front door, everybody's saying hello. They walked right, they gowned up, glove and hairnet and followed that process, but nobody stopped him. And he got all the way into the production area and nobody stopped them. So that's an opportunity for a food safety challenge there, is seeing if you see something, are people saying something, right? So that could be an opportunity for a food safety challenge. You could see, like if you're using cameras, for example, if that's your method for conducting if that's your security method, is using cameras, you could pretend that if that camera went blank, what would you do? So there are a lot of mock audits. So like what I don't want you to do is subject yourself. We're going to turn off this camera for 3 hours and see if anything happens. I don't want you to subject yourself to a potential actual food defense issue. But you could say, if this camera wasn't on, what would we do? If this, so I think there's a lot of mock exercises you can do as well together with your food defense team.
Excellent. Next question. How can we control label inventory when we print them in-house while products are being made?
That's up to you with your process and your program. I think I'm going to default that one to Tracy at 9:45, and maybe she can provide a little, or not 9:45, I believe. Or I don't know when she is up at 9. I can't remember. Let me go back.
Tracy is at 10:45.
10:45. So Tracy would be a great person to answer that question. But if you're printing them in-house, it's controlling the extra labels, right? It's ensuring that during a changeover, when it comes to your product, that the old labels are gone. We've been in sites, where there's one product running, but there's 3 different labels at the finished product area. So lo and behold, about 4 months later, there was a recall due to mislabeling of allergens. So you need to make sure that there's organization. So if you're going to print them in-house and you're going to, and again, it depends on your process. So there are just some key areas. It's discarding the leftover labels. It's ensuring that there's not multiple labels at that area, that labeling control area. It's, having, and one recall actually happened. QA did hourly checks and did label checks, but it was a very short run. And that run was only 45 minutes. So it missed the QA check. And lo and behold, Murphy took over and the law went into effect. And that was the one that was mislabeled. So it's really understanding your process and your product and figuring out where those potential risks are. So do that risk assessment. Where could things go wrong? What are the controls I have in place in order to ensure that I have the right product and the right label together?